Was the Zodiac Killer on the campus of Stanford University in 1969 and 71? One Stanford alumnus believes it may be so, and may have the evidence to prove it. While researching the history of the Stanford Chaparral, former Chaparral editor and 1988 graduate James Bigtwin made discoveries in the archives of the Chaparral and Stanford Daily that literally blew his mind. Not only did he learn that the Zodiac may have been at Stanford, he also learned the possible identity of the killer. He spent more than 3 years researching the Chaparral, Stanford's humor magazine, while producing a coffee table book for its 125th anniversary in 2024, happening upon his discoveries by accident while researching and leading the team of alums who produced the commemorative book. Bigtwin had become familiar with the Zodiac case years earlier after learning his past acquaintance, Richard Gaikowski, had been accused of being the killer in a 2009 History Channel Mystery Quest episode. The accusations originate from one individual, Blaine, who knew Gaikowski from the 60s onward. Bigtwin had known Gaikowski in the 1990s, but eventually lost touch with him. Gaikowski passed away in 2004. When he first learned of the Zodiac accusations in 2016, Bigtwin thought it was pretty far-fetched, but did remember one discussion when Gaikowski got strangely angry regarding Ronald Reagan and astrology.
It was literally the only time I remember Richard getting angry at me, and since it was about astrology, it gave me pause. I decided to read about the Zodiac case, went to some websites, watched the 2007 Zodiac movie. I looked for a while, but decided I had nothing to add. But it was because of this research around 2016 that I was able to recognize what I was seeing in the Chaparral and Daily archives in 2023.
Gaikowski was never named by law enforcement as an official suspect, but was surveilled for a short period of time as part of the Zodiac investigation in the 1980s. He was a filmmaker, computer pioneer, and newspaper reporter, first at mainstream papers before working for the San Francisco Good Times, a leading publication of the underground press during the Vietnam protest era. Gaikowski wrote articles under the pen name Dick Gaik. In February 2023, Bigtwin discovered a byline for Dick Gaiki or Geeky in a 1971 Stanford Chaparral in an article about computers. The byline seems strangely similar to Dick Gaik, and the article was on a subject he would have been interested in. Bigtwin subsequently discovered multiple bylines for Dick Gaiki in the Stanford Daily, writing about the Mid-Peninsula Free University, Stanford hospital workers, and summer workshops for non-students. Bigtwin extensively tried to find the identity of Dick Gaiki, or anyone who remembered him, all to no avail, although it was officially confirmed that no one by that name ever attended Stanford. The possibility remains that Dick Gaiki is indeed Dick Gaik. But the Chaparral issue with the Dick Gaiki byline was to reveal an additional mystery. Some months later, Bigtwin discovered the issue was a prank, special edition constructed from reprints of actual Stanford Daily articles between July 7th and July 23rd, 1971, but with a date on the masthead of March 5th, 1971. Bigtwin dubbed the issue The Missing Link because of the caption on the cover photo. Even more mysterious, pages 2 and 3 of the 4-page issue were blank. Bigtwin believes the blank pages in the fake issue were intentional.
When the blank pages were first discovered, we jokingly wondered, how stoned were they? I mean, it was the 70s, but I now believe they are knowingly part of the prank issue, slipped into the archives.
The story behind the issue is still a mystery, but Suri hopes additional people seeing it may jog some memories or shake out additional clues. To that end, it was included in full in the Chaparral commemorative book, the Chappie, 125 years of issues. The potential Zodiac clue is on page 394 in a coincidental reference to a Harry Potter scene.
The missing link was certainly the most bizarre thing I found in all the research, and easily merited its place in the Chappie book. A few more eyeballs seeing it will be a very good thing as well.
If confirmed, the discovery would show Richard Gaikowski was at Stanford in the early 1970s, writing under a variation of his pen name. That will be very interesting information to those who follow the case, but in itself is not a crime, and is not directly related to the Zodiac. That is where the second major discovery of this research comes into play. In October 1970, the public was first made aware of Zodiac's appreciation of the Gilbert and Sullivan comic opera, The Mikado, based on letters sent to police in July 1970. Zodiac sent another letter in January 1974 that also quoted Mikado lyrics. Bigtwin found Zodiac Mikado coincidences in the Stanford Daily in October 1969, 1 year prior to when anyone in the public would have known to connect them.
There are only a few possibilities for the Zodiac Mikado things I found. These should not exist, could not exist, without it being the work of the perpetrator. If it's not, it's the most incredible string of coincidences that say otherwise.
The October 31st, 1969 Stanford Daily contains the bulk of these coincidences. On page 4 is an uncredited review of the Mikado being performed by the Lamplighters in San Francisco. While the review contains no byline, it is clear it is written by a Mikado aficionado who knows the show well and notes the high points like the Grand Executioner's truly diabolical laugh. The Mikado Review shares the page with an album review of Douglas Leedy's The Electric Zodiac that includes a photo of the album with the word electric missing, leaving only the words, the Zodiac. The Mikado Review has a peculiarity in that it has some of the poorest layout of any article of the Stanford Daily. In fact, layout mistakes are quite rare, but not for this Mikado Review. The left side space is too small and the center column space too large. The left column is so close to the other article, it results in many letters being cut off. Attempts to find other such layout mistakes in Stanford Daily issues have not found anything this poor. Perhaps it was made in a hurry or by someone under stress. While the Mikado Review layout is haphazard, its alignment seems precise. It is exactly positioned over a short letter to the editor on the page below about the Zodiac. This alignment is further marked by a blemish from the printing press on the Mikado Review exactly over the letter and the words Zodiac and Stanford. The title of the letter to the editor was Poor Taste, calling out the poor taste of the Daily for running a week earlier a message to the Zodiac Killer, presumably joke editorial on October 24th, which invited Zodiac to the Stanford campus, among other things. That editorial appears to be a parody of the San Francisco Examiner's message to the Zodiac Killer from October 19th. Bad college parody humor is presumably how the Stanford Daily's editorial was viewed at the time. But strangely, it is one of two messages to the Zodiac published that same day, October 24th, 1969. Also on that day, the Berkeley Tribe published A Message for the Zodiac Killer, written by, wait for it, Blaine, the main accuser of Richard Gaikowski. Blaine, who also claimed he wrote his Zodiac article at the request of Gaikowski.
Once this was all put together, I knew I needed to come forward with what I found. This all needs to be investigated by the proper authorities because these discoveries really may solve the case.
The Mid-Peninsula was peripherally involved in the Zodiac case. Someone claiming to be Zodiac did indeed call the Palo Alto Times on October 20th, 1969, and later called the Palo Alto Police on November 4th, saying they were going on to the Stanford campus. There was also a call to police in San Jose, but otherwise Zodiac crimes and incidents occurred in the North Bay and in San Francisco.
Even though I had read about Zodiac years ago, I never saw that he had called Palo Alto or threatened to come on the Stanford campus. When I started researching the Chaparral, I hadn't even heard that there were 4 Stanford murders in the early 70s. I somehow missed that information when I was there in the 80s.
The Stanford murders basically refers to the 4 murders on campus between February 1973 and October 1974, 3 of which have been solved by DNA analysis after remaining cold cases for over 40 years. The remaining cold case, David Levine, theoretically could be affected by this new information, as well as other murders and non-natural deaths in the Bay Area in the early 70s. Bigtwin has written a book, The Only Time Richard Got Angry at Me. The book chronicles his journey as a chappie, as Chaparral staffers are called, through meeting Gaikowski, to his coincidental discoveries in the 2020s.
It's hard to imagine the many Zodiac Mikado items in the October 31st, 1969 Stanford Daily to be just coincidence. It was 9 months prior to Zodiac writing about the Mikado. That leaves the conclusion that they were intentional and made by the killer. And if Dick Gaike is indeed Dick Gaik, that places a major Zodiac suspect at the same newspaper. That is quite amazing, and brings us to the cusp of identifying the Zodiac.
Zodiac is widely considered to be the top remaining cold case murders of the 20th century, with the killer eluding investigators now for more than 50 years. The book, The Chappie, 125 Years of Issues, which contains the reprint of the 1971 Missing Link issue, is on sale at the Stanford University bookstore, Kepler's Books in Menlo Park, and Bell's Books and Books Inc. in Palo Alto. The book, The Only Time Richard Got Angry at Me, with full details about the discoveries, is available on Amazon. For more information, visit the website, theonlytime.org.